What are you progressing? You say you're progressing a lot, but to what? Like, what is the meaning of all this? What is the meaning of your wealth? What is the meaning of having all these people run after all these deals all the time?
Hi, welcome back to the Family Wealth Edge, episode number 12. Kristen, unbelievable that we've already recorded 12 episodes. And we have a returning guest. We love Chris and his story so much that we asked him to come back for part two of his conversation around spiritual capital. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, Vincent. Thanks.
We're
Excellent.
glad to have him back, right? Last time I feel like it was one of our longest episodes that we filmed, but we still needed to have you back for more, Chris, because this topic is just, it's not, I mean, it's not a surface topic, right? So you can't give it a surface conversation. We've got to dive in more deeply. And I feel like to some degree we left on a cliffhanger because you had been talking about this polarity map that has really been useful to help people think about the practical ways that spiritual capital shows up in their lives. And so the polarity between spiritual living and natural living, I think that is where some of the like, okay, the how to piece of this lives. So I want to make sure we give you the chance while we talk in part two today to dive into some of that as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love talking about the two sides of this way of thriving. I think this is important for complete human thriving to kind of have both sides of it, and a polarity map is a great way of doing it. So.
So talk about what a polarity map is in case someone listening hasn't bumped into that type of thinking before.
So is this notion that there's a mutual dependency on of two poles is and think of breathing, inhaling and exhaling. So this is a mutual dependency. You have to do both inhaling and exhaling to have a balance in this, and to go too far on one pole or the other creates problems. Saving and spending is a classic polarity as well. You need to do both sides of it. And to do too much of one side is to get the overuses of that one side and run the risks of not getting enough of the benefits of the other side.
Mm, got it. Okay. So I can see then where the spiritual focus and like the natural focus can set up nicely as a polarity.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it's a category. It's meant to get a conversation going. It's a rough category to allow people to just think about this topic. I offer it because I think people need safer and easier conversations in this area. I think all too often we avoid conversations in this area because they get too difficult too quickly. And if we can release some of that tension from it, we can probably get to know each other better and maybe even get to know deeper ways of thriving and
Yeah.
tapping this resource that I think is the most transformative resource for families.
Yeah. Share more, Chris. I think it's we see this the people that we care about the most and spend a lot of time with are the hardest to have these deep and some deep and meaningful conversations. And like you said, very difficult. In our work the last 10 years with families, I think to your point, that is the magic sauce. If families can help themselves and we can help them have better difficult conversation. How's that for a bad English? A better difficult conversation, the world would be a better place without being
Mm.
too dramatic. It really is those we talk about macro and micro conversations. So there's the big conversations. Kristen, you gave a great example a few episodes ago about the sex talk with our teenage kids, right? Like we're just going to lay this on you in one conversation, which is not
Mhm.
always helpful or a good idea. It's these micro conversations, smaller, more frequent conversations. Love to hear your insight, Chris, on how you're helping families and individuals have these more difficult conversations.
Sure, and I agree. It has many layers to it as far as micro conversations. It can be about purpose. It can be about meaning. It can even be about loneliness. It could be about any number of different topics that touch on this kind of core of ourselves and how we present ourselves in this world. On the spiritual side, here I'm just going to compare attributes for a few minutes. On
Please.
one side is being, the spiritual it has this focus on being, I mean, actively present to the world, but with this notion of maybe taking some time out for a lot of people have different meditation techniques across different types of meditation, different types of spiritual paths. Whereas doing is what I would put on the other side of the natural. Like we're really great at doing, and we're great, especially in America, at excelling at that. I think we talked about that last time.
We did. It was like therapy for me. It was great. That was helpful.
Taking time just to be. And then the next one I would put as mystic. I think a lot of people have this notion of a meaning beyond ourselves and some connection with a meaning beyond ourselves, um, which is, it's common to all paths, and it is something that's helpful. I think the notion of a higher power is helpful.
Mhm.
All too often, um, we need to get into touch with that higher power more often than not. On the other side, I think humanistic, one thrives in one's body and one's intellect, whereas mystic, one's thriving kind of in one's soul, to use that term.
Mm.
Um, on the other side, I would say noble in the sense that usually there's this principled point of view, which has kind of an intrinsic sense of self. And that's not unique to spiritual. That's as old as Aristotle, that we should have an identity that's intrinsic to ourselves and not put it into someone else. But how fundamental is that? And especially in this
Mhm.
space, that all too easily we put our identity into our work or into our status
Yeah.
or into our influence or power or control. And this is one of those powerful things that can help balance that out, right? If we find a higher purpose beyond ourselves. Um, on the other side, it's mutual aid. It's um, cooperating with each other to make something work. It's pragmatic in the sense that it finds what needs to be done in this world and does it. I think we're all really great at that usually. Um, and it's secular in the sense that it meets people without judgment on that natural side. Whereas I think one of the things on the spiritual side is that um, it is principled, but perhaps runs the risk of sometimes falling into that judgment. And that leads us to our next category, which is to go through the overuses on both
Yes.
of these.
So that seems to be where the trouble lies, right? And why people, Vincent, I noticed when you were kind of describing this whole realm of conversation, spiritual capital, that I think people may avoid it because they worry that it will get into difficult conversations. And
Yeah.
on one hand, like what could go wrong with having a conversation with your family? I don't know, you're opening a meeting that you're having with your family members by saying, can everyone share one moment that they've had in the last year that really helped you to find meaning outside of yourself? Like, what could go wrong with that conversation? That's beautiful, right? But people do think about, oh, there can be some trouble in conversations about the spiritual. And I think that it a lot of times lives underneath of what you just described, Chris, that this principles, this set of values, the overuse of them on the spiritual side can be this idea of judgment.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's multiple overuses or risks on the spiritual side. I would say the easiest to name is kind of getting lost in the clouds, navel gazing. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
just a simple one. But I think the number one risk that really destroys these conversations is rigidity.
Hmm.
And 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 I know I went through it. I think it's a developmental stage for those who are spiritual as well as probably anyone of a human development. I think rigidity about some point of view that you're passionate about is something that we all walk through at some point. But um and I'm spiritual and religious, so I want everyone to hear that clearly. I'm not in any way against religion, but there is a chance of risk of getting rigidity about religiosity
Hmm.
and just getting that extra uptightness about it. And that really is blocking conversations. And so the better we can name that up front and set that aside, so as to be able to have just a real beautiful testimonial about what's helping a person. Just let that
Mm-hmm.
beautiful notion of mercy or grace or forgiveness come through without adding layers of what would set other people off about it, right? And let them find it on their own. If they really find your testimony beautiful, you can take it to the next level.
Yeah.
um Rigidity, and then following from rigidity, yeah, self-righteousness,
Yeah.
judgmentalism follows pretty easily from that, right? um yeah, and I would ask this group this question, like, then this is my tension with God. I would bring to everyone else. Do you fear coming incomplete before God? Like that's why I had to write my book. I had that fear and still probably struggle with it. And behind every theologian, there's the tension with God that theologian has. And coming incomplete before God is something we just need to let God's mercy fill in. You know, we all radically come incomplete before God, but we're trying, striving, those who are earnest about it, to bring Him a gift, and we really just need to allow Him to give us the gift and just
Yeah.
receive it, and just come with empty hands, as my great guide Saint Therese of Lisieux says. And I think that's like fearing coming incomplete before God for ourselves, but
Yeah.
also it can bleed over into relationships, like
Yeah.
especially think of parents, like fearing coming incomplete before God because of what they did or didn't do for their children, or what their children
Mm-hmm.
believe or don't believe. I mean, this
Crit-
intensifies things.
what's coming up for me when you're speaking is like imposter syndrome, right? So as an individual, if you look at it from the faith perspective or even inside the family ecosystem, right? It's like I'm showing up incomplete in front of my parents, or I'm an imposter in this world of family wealth, as an example. I love just how you were speaking. I go, huh, that was me. And a lot of our clients, in a lot of ways, as we're going through this journey of growing up, you almost feel like, at least I did, like you don't belong. And there's like this feeling of wanting to avoid difficult challenges or conversations because we feel incomplete or not up to the task of something. I just love the way you phrased it. It was a bit of an aha for me, going, no, no shit. Right? It's like we walk this. I'll go back to our conversation on the first episode with you. We walked this long road together. You figuratively walked a tremendously long road. And if we can just embrace more of, we are a gift. We are a gift to this world. We are a gift to each other. We're a gift to our relationships. Wow. I felt myself just go, whoa, with all my errors and flaws, we're human. And it's a path that we walk, and there's no right or wrong way. I guess you could argue there is sometimes a wrong way. But just wanted to thank you for that. Just putting some language for me, Chris, on that. We don't have to be perfect or incomplete. It's a journey that we have to, or at least if we want to accept it, the journey is there to be received. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that was what was coming up for me.
It was perfect, Vincent. So I've been back and forth for about 2 months now about whether to post an article about imposter syndrome, and specifically
How
about
funny.
whether to air my own imposter syndrome from my 20s out there for everyone else to hear. And if you got like a little 2 seconds, and it ties to the very next thing, natural living. I think the first risk is overly self-reliant,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
trying to do too much yourself, presumptuous action, missing the synchronicities, missing the spirit working through the group. Like facilitators know all too well that sometimes you have to let it move and the whole group
Yeah.
has the answer. Um, anyway, I that was the other tension I had with God I had to work out. And my book helped me with my imposter syndrome. I remember in my 20s, just a little aside, that I was a strategy consultant. I was working for PwC Consulting, and IBM bought us and working for them. I had a great job, right? And as far as a young person had, I had a really great job. And I would not buy myself really nice shirts. Like it was so weird. I would go into the same shirt maker that was like 3 blocks from me. So obviously I lived in a nice part of town because there's a top end shirt maker 3 blocks from me. I would peruse these amazing shirts and then never buy one. I'd buy good shirts, but I would never buy amazing shirts. Um, and the same thing was that because I didn't feel like I was worthy of it. And
Yeah.
it wasn't that like I didn't think my parents would approve of it. My dad had already taken me to his bespoke suit maker. Like I knew I knew that like dad would be very proud that I had the ability and had my life balanced enough to buy a nice shirt. And I was in a job that perfectly warranted a really nice shirt too. And the same thing with my job. Like I would work extra hard, even though I like my bosses would tell me like you don't need to do this. Like you are great at what you do and you're like a superstar. Like you don't have to work all the time like this. And I just did. like I just had it, I had to do it. And it took me a long time to work through um that imposter syndrome. And
Mm.
yes, I do think that this dynamic of seeing oneself as already loved, as already gifted, and as being already a gift to others, if you're just there to help, um, it helps get through some of this, right? And then it
Yeah.
starts to help balance so many other relationships, right? Because once you let go of the overwork, then you can put other priorities in right place. Um,
And
so
I could make the argument. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
so I hear a lot about burnout. I mean, burnout's the
Yeah.
the key risk of overly self-reliant. Sorry, Kristen.
Hmm. No, I think you're right. And what I was going to say is I think that our clients, especially the rising generation clients, have additional, can I call it temptation to fall into that trap because, I have this last name. I may not feel worthy of it. My bank account says this. I didn't earn that. So I think that there are additional hurdles around, imposter syndrome and feeling just valued in and of yourself, maybe because of that status.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
then
I
there's the
mean,
other side of it. There's the other side of it too, where they overemphasize their last
Yeah.
name
Yeah.
and abuse the wealth and good fortune they've been given with that arrogance and bravado. Sorry, Chris, I cut you off there. Yeah.
It's both
I
the same
mean,
problem, just a different expression of it, right?
Yeah.
or they feel pressured to maintain or grow the status too, right? I mean,
Hmm.
there's that shoe to fill that sometimes is explicit. And I think it does lead into my next point about overuses of natural living, which is materialistic. Like there's a risk that you start to think that what you can produce or what you can show as a result of producing defines you. And it just isn't really your core, right? And you
Hmm.
get into a vicious loop about that because at the end of it, if you keep diving deeper into hedonism or status, it's a quicksand or whatever. It's
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
vortex.
Yeah. Money can't buy you happiness, as they say. It's a false bond with the wrong idol, let's say, right? You're attached to
Hmm.
the wrong mission. This idea of chasing material status.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it last time or not, but this started with a question from an estate planning attorney, David Claflin, who asked, "Is money doing for people what it is supposed to be doing for
Yeah.
people?"
Hmm.
Good question. Good question.
And I hear so often of this inverse view of happiness where like people that are really struggling to make ends meet are unhappy, then around, some sort of midlife or mid society, mid economic status, there's a height
Hmm.
of happiness, and it just trails off pretty steadily the higher you get in the income or
Hmm.
wealth spectrum. And it's so sad, right? Because they have the resources at their disposal to have good human, intellectual, and social and spiritual capital, and yet they don't seem to put it at the disposition of everyone thriving, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And um, this is where like a reordering where we put love back at the center of our
Yeah.
identities and our lives is so important. And for many people from many centuries, spirituality is the way that people
Yeah.
reorient and use as a touchstone for that love and that deeper purpose and that deeper identity. It's the way that we traditionally have balanced all of this.
You know how there's this, I liken this, I don't know, we'll call it like financial striving or whatever. The problem is, it's the Sunia Luther, the researcher, her temptation of I can, therefore I must, right? Like I have this deal that came in front of me and I have the resources to do it and I can do it. So of course I dive into it, but it's keeping me distracted and it's making my life more and more complex to be getting involved in all of these things. And it's moving me away from the spiritual because it's keeping me inside of the materialistic, the hedonistic. So then look at, I got a 30% return. Oh my gosh, look at what I did. This is amazing. Then the next one comes, the next one comes. I'm making my life more and more complex and I'm increasing wealth even though that I don't necessarily need to be increasing wealth. So many clients lately across the last, I don't know, 5 years are coming in, leading generation clients coming into this work saying, the problem that I have, the problem of this growing wealth is that it's now beyond what my kids can manage the complexity. Now I have this team of advisors to do it, and it's more than they can or should be spending, And so what are we going to do with it? We're giving it away to philanthropy, but to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a lot. You're creating a philanthropic enterprise. So in the midst of the fact that this is an overwhelming problem, they still are moving into the big deals and making the big returns and creating more complexity. So that's a challenge. That's a big challenge. It's like I can, therefore I must. So what is keeping them from doing that when it's such a big temptation is really, I don't know. The only path that I see is a shift in mindset to say, I'm good enough without doing this. I want my focus to be on these other things, the be rather than the do. That's,
Well,
I mean, what's the other way out of it? I feel like it's the only solution is the spiritual capital investment.
I do think it's the most transformative resource. You've hit upon one of the next risks of the natural side, which is lacking meaning or scope, right? Like
Yeah.
too often we get stuck into not even reflecting on our meaning or scope or purpose beyond us. I love C.S. Lewis's quote, to what are you progressing? Like like you say you're progressing a lot, but to what? Like, what is the meaning of all this? What is the meaning of your wealth? Like, what is the meaning of having all these people run after all these deals all the time? I love like when Jay Hughes in his books challenges people, like, what if you didn't have a family meeting on money for a year? Like, what would happen? Like, would you suddenly run out of money? Would you suddenly not be able to like function as a family, or would you suddenly gain clarity on so many other things, relationships, purpose, how to put it all together and why, um, that would bring the rest into order.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think we I've said this a lot the last couple of weeks. We forget that the term is family wealth or family office or family business. There's a family at the core of it. And to your point, Chris, uh, I mean, our bias, my bias, more time should be needed, should be done in the family conversations. And like one example recently, we worked with a family that we spent a whole retreat and even previously on just developing their why statement. But what we found is that's great. But we actually sat with the family and all 28 of them to actually see how this why statement today could apply into a future generation if a real life scenario came present, like a divorce in the family or an untimed death or a liquidity offer. How can this why statement, to your point, what are you progressing to? Can we help families today create some sort of tools that will actually serve the family well into the future? And it was not lost on them or even us how something simple as a 3 or 4 sentence statement to help as a guiding tool, a passage, and maybe in the spiritual definition world can be so useful. And then the younger ones actually, you can see them get grounded in, oh, so I don't, it's not just about, the statement had nothing to do with grow the money. It was all about growing the individuals in the family, staying compact and united as a family so that we can contribute to our community and our causes. So with all of that, Chris, I want to ask you if you can give us a couple of more pearls of wisdom from your world, and then to wrap it up, a plug for yourself. I know we shared it on the first episode. Remind us where we can find you, the title of your book, and any closing thoughts from yourself, Chris and
And where
Kristen.
we can learn more about the polarity map too, because there's a lot. I know no one had a visual on that. So is there a place where we can go see it?
So first off, you can go see the polarity map on my website, as well as watch a whole presentation on it that I did on the main stage of the Purposeful Planning Institute. That is at my first name, my last name.com. So ChrisKoenemann.com. Some final little thoughts real for you is one more risk on the natural side is being overly skeptical of others, and that shuts down a conversation as much as being rigid on the other side. And so, just calling that out as something to bracket, so that we can each just bring a testimonial about what is really best helping us to thrive these days. and seeing and be seen on this level that's so meaningful to people, getting to know each other deeper, and maybe getting to know each other today is different than 5 years ago, right? Or 10 years ago. Um, and so real quick, like I just like would love to unleash the power for people to talk about this and what is most meaningful to them. And in a way that everyone could be at peace and at ease about it and really, I think, unleash something very powerful. I mean, my little testimonial is I think grace heals, transforms, and perfects a person. I think that's all there is. I think we talked about that last time. And that the more we can release that perspective for everyone is beautiful. But I want to hear what helps everyone else. I want to hear what gets them out of the bed in the morning. And I think the purpose is different than the method of achieving it, which is also different than the outcome of what we hope to see. And I think we get stuck in that outcome
Yeah.
and the
Mhm.
method way too much.
Yeah.
And when we do so, we're losing joy, hope, and peace, on if you're looking back from one orthogonal to the other, the natural side needs those three. Or
Mhm.
on the spiritual side, we're missing some of the best of success, appreciating psychology, appreciating neuroscience, appreciating
Mhm.
philosophy. There's so much that we can appreciate of how to thrive. And I think whenever we get stuck in one of these two poles too much, we risk human stagnation.
Mhm. Well, it
Well
sounds
said.
like you do a great job, Chris, of making these conversations that can feel a little bit intimidating for families to know how to have these conversations. You make it easy, which is amazing.
Mm. Thank
Thank
you,
Mhm.
you.
Chris. That's 2 episodes. Our first back-to-back The Family Wealth Edge with Chris. Kristen, thank you. We'll see you guys soon.